My Lords, I rise and I again feel I'm slightly swimming against the tides to oppose this amendment, which seems to me rooted in the outlook that I think of as good chappery. I'm borrowing Lord Wallace's nomenclature in introducing it. The idea that when you are appointed to a public body in some presumably painful operation, your opinion glands are cauterized and you suddenly become a wise, disinterested, neutral person who is uniquely capable of raising your eyes above the partisan scrum and descrying the true national interest. Lord Wallace said, what if the Prime Minister isn't a good chap or a good chapess? The implication being that if you are appointed to HOLAC, you must by definition have these virtues. But who appoints you to HOLAC? How is it that you suddenly, by virtue of getting there, drop all of your assumptions and prejudices and become this kind of idealized Platonic guardian? I have to say, it is a doctrine that has debilitated and delegitimized successive governments because it has widened the gap between government and governed. I called it good chappery, but actually a more accurate word would be oligarchy. It's a way of taking a group of people and putting them in a privileged position. An oligarchy now based not on birth so much as on outlook. How many HOLAC nominees, for example, would have voted with the majority in the 2016 referendum? Just to take the one thing where we actually have an exact measure of how the country at large felt about one specific issue. And the idea that we can, in making these changes to the composition of this House, narrow, in effect, the way of coming here, putting another filter, straining the nominations through some sort of handkerchief of good chappery, strikes me as utterly inconsistent with the times and almost certainly unacceptable to public opinion. And also, by the way, very much at odds with Lord Newby's previous amendment. I was one of the small number who supported it. It's one of those funny things where everyone spoke in favour of it and then everyone voted against it. It was rather like the Holocaust Education Centre thing. All the speeches were one way, all the votes were the other way. But it seems to me that once we start reopening, not all the speeches, no, my noble friend Lord Howard was indeed one who spoke in favour of the Education Centre, but it seems to me that once we start making these changes, the pressure is going to be for widening rather than narrowing the route by which people come here. In other words, there will be more pressure for some kind of direct representation, some kind of democratic element. And those who are against it, the majority of you, my lords, I suspect on both benches, those of you who don't want a democratic chamber, I put it to you that your best tactic was actually just to lie low and do absolutely nothing. To allow this House, in the words of the Gilbert and Sullivan song, to do nothing in particular and do it very well. Because once you open the issue of the composition and function of this chamber, then you invite the public into a conversation which I can guarantee you is not going to end with a consensus around putting more power in the hands of some appointed committee rather than of an elected government. So if I can go back to something that my noble friend Lord Strathclyde said in the last batch, I do think there is a very strong case, now that we have decided to open the issue and change our composition by, in my view, mistakenly removing our remaining hereditary colleagues. If we're going to do that, we should have a royal commission, and we should look in a measured and judicious way at how this chamber can be made more democratically accountable. Because if we don't do that in a timely and temperate spirit, it seems to me very likely that a future government will make changes that the majority of the Lords gathered here would not like, and it will do so in a spirit of frustration, having been defeated on some measure, and it will lash out in anger and legislate in haste.